Okay, I have a guest with me today. I have Kim Houston. She is formerly a casting director. Well, you're still casting, right?
I'm going into the formerly a little bit, but
She's
yes,
kind of going into the
I do cast for
formerly.
people that I know. But yeah,
Cool.
we could talk about that and why. But
And she has a studio called Kim Houston Acting Studios in
mm,
Hollywood, Florida. How are you doing, Kim?
I'm doing great. We have studios also in Atlanta as
Saw that
well.
as well.
So yeah, we're kind of branching into where everybody's working, but I'm doing great, thanks.
I didn't know you actually had. I saw that you guys were doing some classes in Atlanta. I didn't know you guys actually had now a
Yeah,
place in
well,
Atlanta.
so we a lot of the business has changed to, self-taping studios. So we kind of have a little spot for actors to be able to put themselves on tape for projects. Not
Cool.
only, things that I would be working on, but anything they need really.
I
It's
find that's how I like to tape is you're not going into a room anymore with a casting director. So it's like if I self tape myself, I feel like I'm only going to see it through the prism of me. But if I can go, see somebody else and have them kind of give me ideas the same way kind of a casting director would,
exactly.
it gives you that
Yes.
same feel of being in the room.
Yeah, there's so much now technically that goes into the auditions also. It's kind of nice, I think, as an actor to just focus on your audition and on the choices
Agreed.
that you want to make instead of like, how do I label it? Where do I put my slate? And what's the compression?
Yeah.
And I mean, those are things that will get you eliminated though. So why not have
Yeah.
somebody just help? So we try to make it really
Yeah.
affordable. I'd like to even make it more affordable because it doesn't look like it's going back to in person as much. I kind of thought it
No,
was
no.
more of a shorter time until COVID was over and things might go back to in person, but very few people seem to like it. I
I
guess the
feel they
client is so much easier for them.
I feel they see, the self tape is now cost cutting measure because now all you need to do is maybe a screen test if you want to do something else. But now, it's the
You mean
first
as
run.
far
We can
as
just
the
go through
clients and what their budget is?
as as for well, yeah, I mean, it just seems like everything is kind of gone self tape now for the first run of auditions. If
Right.
callbacks come in, we would, you know, then we might need you in. But I don't know. This is the future.
It's changed a lot. Absolutely. I've been lucky enough to work in it for about 30 years and see a lot of technical changes for sure from where we started on beta and half-inch tapes and actually recording voiceover on like 8 track, in such a bad
Wow.
and just no booth even, and things seem to
Yeah.
work. But yeah, and then changing over to those 3/4. I mean, back in the day, it was just in some ways it was so much nicer because there was time. And that's what's missing now, I feel, is everybody wants
Mm.
everything so quick and everyone's available and everyone's online and but there's no time to think about who you would really like to put on this project. You kind of in casting, you're just, reaching out and you have this team and they're giving you people and you're working with agents and managers, but there's to me all of a sudden you're getting people presented to you without really you getting to take the time. In the old days we had this
Mm.
big book, who and the resumes
Yeah.
and we'd flip through and read their resume, what they do lately, and and talk about them and plan, and that
Yeah.
was kind of cool because I think the jobs were funner for
Yeah.
me for sure, being part of a team like that and the collaboration and you know really knowing the actors a lot more where you don't as much now. You're just kind of checking out links on stuff that they've done and who knows. So I do miss all that because that was really great to just take the time to think about people and plan and know exactly who was coming in and who wasn't and who was available. And, now it's just there's so the reason I say formerly casting is really COVID changed so many things for me and having to be dedicated to my screen, no matter if it was a phone, an iPad, a computer. I had like no life at all. I would have to, thank God I had a dog, is all I can say, because the dog is what got me to get up, go walk, make sure, because it was just overwhelming, and I'd get headaches from watching so much. And
Mhm.
I'd know in 7 seconds when I want to watch somebody or not. And that didn't really seem fair, but it was the process and categorizing. And then you're basically then just sorting people on Excel sheets and making notes. And I was going crazy, ripping my hair out with, this isn't really what I want to do, you know?
Yeah.
Typically you do a casting, you see people in person, and you kind of know who's being uploaded. So hardly would I have to watch it again, or I might watch it again just to put my
Mm.
selections in, but to have to rewatch people because you forget, and then dealing with COVID and remembering who had it, who didn't, who needed wardrobe, and ah,
Mhm.
it was like, no thanks. No
So
thanks.
so it
And
kind of
so
so it kind of delved into, just looking at screens all day, and you were like,
all
I want
day.
to be with people.
I
Yeah.
mean, I would say 20 hours of my day. I got very little sleep because even when I was sleeping, I was seeing videos in my head and hearing
Mm.
voices because, sometimes I would just hear the audition in my earbuds to get to walk. And I
Mm.
could, so this really parlayed for me into wanting to work in voiceover so much more, because I
Mm.
realized that that's what did it for me. If I was, even folding laundry, doing dishes, and videos were playing, because you would get like sometimes 100 submissions for, a part,
Mm.
depending on whatever the project was, if it was for Showtime or Netflix or something really big. You see a lot of people where that was new too, the
Mm.
capacity of um, how many people can submit for a role. Anyway, I would be hearing a lot of more of the auditions and found what is making me stop folding laundry to, oh, who's that? Because I like what they did with their voice, made me feel like they have something for me to see. So that was
Mm.
a game changer for me, and started really then just focusing on ways to help people figure that out for themselves and understand it, so it makes a difference. And then I would see how it would relate on camera to when a director says action. Many times these actors were looking at the lines and just like, okay, go, because they had
Yeah.
something to say, and they weren't really doing any action before. So
Mm.
I kind of started really breaking everything down during that COVID nightmare and seeing, boy, if people just realize this or that, or I think they would succeed. And I've been able to do that in the last, it's been 2 years now, about really
Mm.
see people's career take off with that the little bit of the notes that I can give them. And I'm no coach, I'm not teaching them technique. I
Yeah.
believe these people already have some really good natural skills. And then I put them with coaches. And that's another thing
Mm.
too, is being able to meet someone and know who they really should be working with. And that's
Mm.
more of the collaborating that I enjoy doing, which I was doing in casting before, but it went into like
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Um,
order, yeah, in
so
order for me
so
to feel like I had a life, I had to change gears that way. But I don't
can
know
we
if you
can we
even
go back?
asked me that. Sorry, I started
No, no,
talking.
no. I love what you just said. I just wanted to go back though to one thing. You were talking about time. And that seems to be, we continue to just speed up the casting process more and more and more. Can you talk a little bit about that transition from, because I've heard the stories back in the 70s and the 80s where it was a different time where they would
Oh,
like,
it was great. I
you
loved
would
being
have
in
time to
casting.
talk to them.
I love being casting. I was so lucky to get into it. I worked at a talent agency office
Oh.
that was just opening and didn't know anything. I saw an ad. It's in a local magazine they have in Florida, New Times. It's like a rag. Nobody really looks at it then. Now it's pretty well known. But there was an
Mm.
ad. I just happened to be. I was doing. I was becoming a recording engineer in college, working in audio studios, and it wasn't working out for me. There
Mm.
really were no girls in the studios then, and they would have preferred me in, the waiting room uh, and supplying things for the artist instead of helping them in the recording room. They really would tell me what to wear, and it was a whole different world. But
Wow.
in order for me to stay in that business, I had to kind of conform or go on the road. And I did go on the road with some big bands, and that just, it wasn't for me. As much as I loved being around live music, I thought that's my passion. Um, there's just too much drama, too many musicians, and just too much. You would get distracted, and guys want to help you, and that's a predominantly guy field. So again, I had guys helping me where I needed to really learn things and do things on my own. And being just an only girl with a bunch of guys on the road is not a good idea for anybody.
No.
So I saw this ad. Sorry, I got distracted again. So I saw this ad for just random. Like, I
Mm.
remember really sitting down, like, what am I going to do now? And looking through this, and it said talent agency. And I know I just didn't have a lot of experience even in life yet. I was in my early 20s, but I thought it meant like planning parties. For some reason, the talent to me meant clowns, entertainment, parties. I just didn't understand the true definition of talent, and
Mm.
that it was referring to actors and the business. And so when I went into the office and saw headshots, and they were working on shows that I watched,
Mm.
Miami Vice.
Mm.
That's how long ago. And that was really cool. Like, this stuff goes on here. And then it was like, oh yeah, a lot of this stuff goes on there. And then into I loved fashion at that time too. I also went to fashion college to be a merchandiser after the engineering, and
Wow.
couldn't find my way because I never sewed. I never took sewing classes, and that's really what you need to succeed in that world. And so not being a musician, not
Yeah.
having the ear for music, and not being someone that can alter and make clothes, you're kind of like in production. Then I found, like, you're
Mm.
behind the scenes, you're not in that foreground. So I kind of like that. I liked being able to push people forward. And in this talent agency, however, things were very busy very fast in the mid to late 80s. We had just so much work, so much print work and commercial work, and feature films were coming. And there was so much going on at once that as soon as you got to your job and sat down, you're on the phone all day. You had like no voice, and you're just dry mouth, and leave at 6 o'clock. And at that time, again, because of time, there were just beepers and things. So people, really needed to talk to you, they'd beep you. But otherwise, you were you had a life, I think, where now my phone is nonstop with time
Yeah.
zones and different clients in different countries and Zoom, and you're always on. But that was really nice because then you could also go and choose who you wanted to hang out with in the business too. It wasn't that they
Yeah.
were always around. So that talent agency taught me a great deal about how actors do not look like their headshots. And you have no idea what an actor was doing when you sent them to an audition. Then you
Mm.
just waited to get any kind of feedback you could from a casting director. And they were so busy that you never got to talk to the casting director. You talked to a lot of assistants. So I
Mm.
started to make friends with those people, which was essential to me, and really knowing their voices. I'd never met them for I think I worked there about 2 years until I
Mm.
finally was like, I've got to figure out who these people are. And one of the busiest casting offices at that time was the casting directors. That's what it was called, from D Miller. And I would get the most calls at the talent agency for them. And they had so much going on. She had three different, they were bays at the time, but I didn't know because I hadn't been. And again, constantly someone on commercials, constantly someone doing photography and print work, and then feature films or TV series. And sounded like a madhouse. And I needed to check
Yeah.
it out. Like, what is going on over there? So I worked with this one actor all the time, because when I started at the agency, the owner gave me a list, like, here's your Caucasians, here's your African Americans, and different age groups, like my cheat sheet, because
Yeah.
she had to leave the country. She had elderly parents, and had to go to Puerto Rico to be with them and just left me. And that was the best way to learn, of course. But,
Mm.
I was running the show having no experience. So I learned very quickly who was who, you know, what kind of time to spend with what casting director then, who were the people that I wanted to get. You were calling and beeping people, waiting for them to call you back. And at that time, everybody was multi-listed with the agents that were here, which were about four, maybe, or five.
Mm.
But it was all about who called you first. So I started to understand that. Well, like, what order are we in, I wonder, at this
Mm.
agency? And how do we get? So I became friendly with these people too. And I would find when they called me first, we were getting callbacks and bookings, but based off that sheet. And I never got to meet the people on the sheet because they were busy going on auditions, and I was going based on their headshots.
Mm.
So I got an opportunity to go to this casting office one day to drop off pictures. And instead of, hiring a messenger like we did then, I was like, oh, I've got to bring it. I've got to shut this office down, and I'm going. So what a rude awakening, honestly, on just so much more of the business, and actually seeing a casting office, how they operated, nothing like I expected. Meeting the faces that I've been talking to on the phone for years, and
Yeah.
seeing the talents that I was sending and how wrong they were for the part. I thought, I mean, in Dee's office, she had these great monitors that you could see what was going on in all of her studios,
Yeah.
and she would just be in there smoking her cigarette, and mirrors around. It was very dark. And I sat in there across from her, so intimidated, listening
Yeah.
to her raspy voice calling everybody honey, or, cursing too. Like, so,
Yeah.
and I got to just like listen to her, but she was busy. So I turned my attention to these monitors. And that's where I saw people that we were representing on that list. Not only nothing like what I thought they were,
Yeah.
appeared to be. I mean, even when I heard their name, I was like, what? And then they didn't, when they said their agency, they didn't say our agency. So I was kind of blown away that day. It was definitely a pivotal day for me.
Wait,
Um,
wait, wait, wait. So they didn't say,
they didn't even say the agency that we were that we, because I remember we caught them. I knew that we were
yeah.
sending them on this casting. Now they lied. So here they were lying about their luck, lying about their agency, and who knows what else. I felt totally
Wow.
just like, I can't trust these people.
Yeah.
And then whenever they did call the actors, they really wanted to talk and felt like you were their therapist in a way.
Yeah.
And the reasons why they couldn't get to this job, or what, they wanted to talk about the job that you were putting them on. There was no time for that.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to go in that direction, I'm sure I could have been very successful as an agent, because I understood then what it takes, and
Yeah.
decided it's not for me. But I knew right
And
away,
you
oh,
understand and you understand networking very well. I
yes,
can already see
absolutely.
that. You
Absolutely.
knew how to network. You were like, I need to know this people so we can send that to.
Yes. And then,
But you
once
brought
I
up
got into
the
casting,
unknown.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The unknown of you didn't know what they were doing when you sent them into
I
the
didn't know
room.
what they had to do also. To see someone on
Mm.
camera in an audition room when you are, back in those days, again, we never saw self-tapes, we never saw auditions. The casting
Yeah.
directors never shared that, let alone hardly feedback. This is
Yeah.
how I got feedback. I remember one day being on the phone, because the one guy I'm talking about that blew it for me, that I was like, who is that? What? That's our leading guy? Like, he was so feminine, and his mannerisms on camera, and he was so little. And I thought, like, that's my dad. That's the guy on our list that so it took me back to a flashback where I remember talking to this casting director and saying, or assistant, how'd so and so do? And I remember her going, oh, no, sorry, it wasn't that. I gave his name. She asked me for, at that time, they gave you time slots and you had to call it in. There wasn't even the fax.
Mm.
So that was great, having the fax machine. But anyway, when they called it in and you gave them the name, I remember hearing a little sigh. And I was like, what was that? Like, she sighed when I said his name. Is that good, bad? That's my leading guy. So now I understood as soon as I saw him on camera, like, oh, now I know what that sigh was about. No wonder he's just not
Like
that guy.
they keep sending him.
Yeah.
He
So I
doesn't
got
look
to
like what we
change,
want.
I got to change the list up, which was really cool. I went back to the
Mm,
agency and really put the people that I thought were right
yeah.
for those parts, not with, my colleague who, of course she had great experience. She ran one of the biggest talent agencies down here, Act One,
Mm,
with Peggy McKinley. That was really, they were groundbreaking women then. And anyway, just changed things around in the agency and was happy to leave the agency
mm.
and let her know why. And the agents that hired me was kind of excited that I was leaving because I think she thought, you know, I'd call them first. They'd get the first dibs on all my on the job. So she was excited about me moving to a place where I could benefit the agency some. And I did. The girl that ended up who owns it now, uh, got to train her in some ways on what to do, what not to do from casting perspective to
Mm.
a new person. Because I remember being that new person. But
Yeah.
she's very successful now, and everybody loves going to that agency, and I love working with them still. So anyway, a lot has changed in that time, but that's what got me into the casting directors, where it was just a life-changing experience for me. I knew that was what I wanted to do when I got to watch people working with people, and I saw how just by so like I said, she had 3 different rooms going on, and I got to see not only the people on talent, but who was working with them. And there was one that was very chatty. One girl was the director and had this wonderful contagious laugh and made that actor so comfortable from her laugh and the way she relaxed them. Whereas in the other room, there was a man director, and he was making this person, just their script was, I'll never forget, just shaking on camera. It was obvious of what he was doing. He was really intimidating them and not making them feel good. And I got to see that difference, like, oh, okay, I know now how important it is to be in that room with someone. And then again, I had no experience really with directing or even running a camera, and they would just throw me in because they were so busy.
Mm.
And they had this one room in the casting directors that anybody who has worked there, which a lot of people have worked there, I think there were 14 people working there when I begged her to hire me for free. Um, they had this one room that was like the shag rug room that nobody liked working in. It was red shag, horrible carpet. It was just gross. Like, you can imagine what you thought was going on in those rooms
Yeah.
on camera. I mean, they did cast for everything back then. But anyway, that's where I learned, in the red shag room. I had
The red
an
shag room.
audition for Volvo, and it was Adam and Eve discover the Volvo in the Garden of Eden. And these models had to be naked. They had to be willing to be completely naked on camera. This
Yeah.
was my first experience of a casting and putting people on camera.
Wow.
It was,
Wow.
yeah, unforgettable experience. Just, being with naked people, first of all, in a room and telling them what to do, and then trying to maneuver the camera in ways that I was unsure of what I was really doing.
Yeah, it's
And
like, do
yet,
you want it full? Yeah, it's like, do you
and
want
yet someone
this full
gives you
throttle?
direction
Like,
though. Someone
yeah.
tells you, like, this is what you do. You slate them, you get their names, you get their profiles, you get their bodies, you get them to turn around, and then you do the action with them, which is they, are walking together, they end up on the ground, and they're
Yeah.
loving. And I'm like, well, how loving? And some people didn't even know each other. You would assign them in the hallway. You're Adam, you're Eve, you're Adam, you're Eve, take your clothes off. And the hallway was lined with people.
Oh,
Lines. Back in the
wow.
day, there were so many, you know, models that were constantly in South Florida for seasons and stuff. And there were lines. There were lines down the. I just remember looking out down the hallway, like, will this ever end? This
Yeah.
is a nightmare. But that was my first job.
But you were
Very glad.
interacting with people. And I
I
think that's,
was,
yeah.
and trying to make them not just feel comfortable in a room, trying to make them feel comfortable in a room naked. Like, should I take my clothes off? I don't know what to do. Like, I feel very awkward. Casting is awkward too. It's being uncomfortable, it's being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. That's what
Yeah.
Anthony Carone always taught me. And he would do these great classes here in our studio, basically on just that, on making people even more uncomfortable and getting them to
He's the one
settle.
that used to be, I don't know if he's still with your studio anymore. The
Anthony,
guy you're, is he?
he's not, he's right now not doing classes with us. He will always be in our hearts.
Yeah, because I watched some of the videos with him, and yeah, he was very,
The YouTube
I
ones I
could
put
so,
on,
yeah, the
I
YouTube ones,
love
I
to
could
tape
so
his
see him.
classes. Yeah, it gets right up
I
in your
could so
face.
see him saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's very, very intimidating, but it's good that you have somebody in there. It's like, that's
Well, yes
what
and no. The thing
actors might
is,
have to deal with.
what do you mean might? They will, if they're really going to
I'm
be
being polite.
successful. Yeah. Have you ever seen Michael Bay in
Yes.
person? Or
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen him in
he's,
person, but I've read
but
about him
still,
and
even
I know
read,
what he's
look
like.
any of his documentaries, maniac,
Yeah.
maniac. That
Joel
intimidation
Silver,
and
he was another one.
just, yeah. So he's preparing you for real life. But in my situation is, and I'm grateful for everybody that comes to my studio. Most of them are beginners. I would love to
Mm,
have an advanced class, but the thing in South Florida, which is always hilarious to me, is people book a commercial and think they're in the biz, they're on their way, or even
Is it,
a role in a film, a small role. I had a boy that
is,
booked, something that he got him to at the Academy Awards, but then they
yeah.
stop. They think
See,
that
isn't that the
yeah,
truth though? And I
they
see
think they
this
made,
with,
they
I
hit
get,
it.
yeah, I've argued with actors about this. I'm like, okay, yeah, you went to school and everything, but it's like acting is something you never stop learning from.
You should
So
never
you
stop.
always
You
got to
should,
keep, just got to
yeah.
keep going.
Well, and the thing is about classes, any classes, I mean, I could see if they're at a different level and people, the beginners, sometimes it is hard
Yeah.
to sit through a class when someone is just brand new. Um,
Yeah.
but that's when you determine too, okay, this isn't right for me. I want to do training with less people and at a
Mm,
higher level. And I like this coach. Like, I
yeah.
like for people to figure that out. Like, I like what this person has to offer. Private training doesn't have to be expensive if you're willing to share time with another actor too. I mean, you're going to
Yeah.
get more out of it. So I encourage those shared sessions all the time. We do them in voiceover because it makes it competitive then,
Yeah.
when someone else is in the booth and then you're going to get up in the booth. And the wonderful thing about the classes in my studio, in my opinion, is a lot of times we let the actors run the camera too and direct
Mm,
whoever's on camera, so that when that dynamic switches, it loosens you up. It gives people an
yeah.
understanding that, okay, now I know what's needed because I just asked somebody for it and they either
Yeah.
gave it to me or not. So I know what to do. You can see it in people's eyes as soon as like they're behind the camera, they're like, look out. And I've seen it so many times. The best example I have is doing a casting. I think I was renting Lori's studio, I remember, and she had something going on in her studio that was for Mexico, like a taco thing. And I had some I don't remember what we were doing in my studio. Oh, it was something with print because this guy, he's an actor. I like to always hire actors, whether they, you know, are graphic designers on the side, or like I'm going later to my friend who works at a restaurant. I always want to go wherever the actors are to support anything they're doing. But this guy was a good photographer. So I was like, why don't you, work with me in casting? And then if of course, if I have any castings. So he was working with me all day in the studio, taking pictures and videotaping their slates, and kept hearing this taco music going on next door, and the guys that were coming in for it that looked just like him. And we kept hearing the music. So we were singing the song throughout the day, the little, jingle they had.
Yeah.
And so they were still casting, and I think they were on a break or something. And I said, why don't you go in there? And he was like, I should cast for that, right? I'm like, of course you should. Like, just go in there. Let's talk to Lori.
Yeah.
Of course he booked it. He booked it in a heartbeat, because as soon as he walked in the room, he didn't have that intimidation of being an actor. He had it as, I'm a client too. I'm working in the other room. I know what you need. I've been watching all day. Let me do it.
Yeah.
And I find that happens quite a bit. We used to have lunch delivered at Lori's office often. And I'm telling you, if we were casting a national commercial, which means you see the world, you see everybody in South Florida, our delivery guy would be the one they chose. I'm not kidding you. I'm
No, I
not kidding
believe
you.
you. I mean,
Because they just walk in
because
like,
they're the
hey,
one
what's
that's gonna
going on? They got this great energy. They're happy to be
yeah,
there. They have a great look usually. And
and they're
they
gonna be a
make
human
the person
being.
feel, well, this is really important too. They make those clients feel like they got to go. They got something else to do. Where other actors sometimes don't make you feel that way. They can sometimes make you feel like they got nothing else to do.
This
It
is
is
all I
funny
have.
though.
Please,
Right.
hat
And
in
there's a
hand.
desperation, and that makes clients uneasy. I've been in the
Yeah.
room for hundreds, I think thousands of callbacks. And that has been such an eye opener for me to see how clients interact with talent, how they don't like to. They really don't until they're ready to book. And even then, they want a liaison. And so in casting,
Yeah.
I was able to do that. And I loved it. I loved the go-between. This is what they said. This is what they want. Don't do that. Walk over there. Don't talk to them.
It's
Don't look at them.
it's interesting. McConaughey talked about that. That was the first
Oh,
thing
yeah.
he learned when he got to Hollywood was the producer said, no, 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 you can't. Because he said to him, I need an agent. And he's like, no, you need to go on vacation and come back and realize, because if you come in there acting like you need something, they're going to sense that in 2 seconds, you're going to be done.
It's so they can
And I
sniff it out. There's actors that have
it's
lost jobs and they don't even know it because they just like, hey, so where are you guys from? It's like, it's
Well,
it's like
where? I
nothing.
don't know.
It's not even something that you would think would have somebody lose a job over, but nah, we don't want to talk to you. That feeling. We're busy,
It's
we're working.
like this is
You're not in
all
our club.
you have.
You're not in our club yet. I've had actors walk over and like eat their food, Hey, so you
Yeah.
grab a sandwich. Oh, I love this place. Or because there's always food at callbacks. Like, that's the time
Yeah.
that everybody gets together and you finally meet because we weren't
Yeah.
filming before. We were just talking on the
Yeah.
phone, pre-pro. You finally get to the callback, which everybody loves that. Everybody, it's the best part of the
Yeah.
job is let's decide on our cast and talk about people and,
Yeah.
and let's eat and let's have coffee and let's see wardrobe and let's look at things. And it's like the casting office is usually like, how long are you gonna be here? Because we're done. And they're there, they don't want to leave because they don't have production offices yet set up. So that's
Yeah.
what casting offices were like. But now without all that, they have themselves all set up first and they're zoom until they finally have to go to the location. So it's
Yeah.
changed quite a bit. Casting platforms have really cut out a lot of casting directors on some jobs and forced production
Yeah.
people to work more in casting, because there needs to be somebody organizing stuff.
Yeah.
Even if you're not hiring a studio, you really need somebody in casting, especially if the job is a union job or,
Yeah.
there's things involved.
Otherwise, you're gonna get like 1,000 videos of,
You're gonna get
and
a
it's just
lot of, yeah. Well, it all depends. It's always interesting because I really enjoy working with students on their film projects and
mm,
watching how they've come along and even I love looking at their call sheets, such detail.
yeah.
They're just great and answering any questions at all. But you can tell that when they're really new, they're like, just send me everybody. It's like,
No.
no,
No. You don't
no,
want that. You don't
right.
want that.
Yeah. Well, there are times that, in casting, you have to put people on that are completely wrong to make a client decide much quicker. Because
Yeah.
otherwise they're like, oh, this is going to get long. And then they're like, oh, let's go back.
Yeah.
Let's go back to
But
the
you're right. If
beginning.
you don't show them that person, they're gonna go, what about this person?
Right. They're always going to think, well, they were good, but they were good, but
Yeah.
like,
So it's
oh
like, all right,
God,
well,
that's
let's
a
watch
train
them.
wreck. Yeah. That's a train wreck. Are we getting more like that? Who knows?
Yeah.
Let's start deciding. Let's start penciling people in. So
Yeah.
that's great. When they start laying down headshots, they're on their way to, it's
Yeah.
like it's a funny process. And it's been great. I feel like I'm taking my bow like it's over, but I
Oh,
do
it's
like being on this side of the acting world and
yeah.
trying to guide people just in the right direction because they can really get messed up and taken advantage of. And there
Yes.
is such a quick way, I think, of success in South Florida if you just know some things. If you know
Yeah.
exactly the right agent for, if you know your market, if you know things like that.
Mm.
So that's kind of, those are the classes I like to teach. In no way
Yeah.
am I an acting coach and teach acting. All my classes that I do are from a casting perspective on auditioning,
Mm.
what to do, what not to do, etiquette a lot of times, um, resources. I mean, I could do a whole class on, on who are the right resources to have in your corner to move forward, what are the basics that you need, and what to
Yeah.
do on camera, and how to understand there all the different ways to audition for the different genres that there are. So I like
Interesting.
that. I like seeing the success that people quickly get it or don't.
Yeah.
And and wow, they'll just call me like I'm working, like I love it,
Yeah.
I'm doing it. So
Wow.
it works.
Interesting. I like that you're covering all the spectrum of
I
acting.
want
Like
to,
you.
because there's a lot that nobody teaches them. And the reason we
Yeah.
do those on-set workshops, and I call it a workshop, is they are on the set completely different from auditioning. You sometimes you don't do anything like you did in the audition
Yeah.
when you're on the set. And
Most of the
who's going
times
to
you won't.
teach you really about blocking and stand in and you know what does that mean when they when they
Or
use those
asking
terms? Yeah,
yeah, asking for a mark. Like if they want you to
exactly.
stand somewhere, it's
Right.
like
Oh, they're
as an
right in your
actor,
face. We're gonna
ask
mark it. We're gonna do coverage here, long there, open wide, and they're just like,
yeah,
what?
ask for a mark, ask for what you need. A lot of novice actors just gotta sit
Yes.
there and be like, just oh, okay, I'll go there. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, I
When
need a
do I
mark.
what happens when things that will happen?
Yeah.
Like what I forget my line. What do I do?
Mm,
What not to do is mostly what we cover.
yeah.
But and
Stay
then
in it. Don't call cut.
my favorite part is really just um, introducing all the different roles to people too on set. And if you have a love for the business, it might not be just, you can't be in it because you're not an actor. There's so
Yeah.
much more to do in production. And that's the fun part, is being part of a team, especially
Yeah.
if you could play both sides. I mean, I'm sure you know how many crew members have their SAG cards or
Yeah.
try to, because they want to be able to jump in there. They've been watching an actor, oh, Mr. Mark, Mr. Mark, Mr. Mark over and over.
Yeah.
How about me? So you never know on the different types of productions and what's needed, but that's my favorite part, is teaching production. I would love
Yeah.
that. I would love to really just take it to another level. So on any of your podcasts, should you know of anyone looking to share space,
Okay.
we're always looking for a warehouse or a big space that we can work in and do more. I want to have
Yeah.
celebrity guests. I want to have a podcast. Maybe you can help me with that.
Yeah.
Do you really
I would
want to
love
have
I would love to help you with that.